over what areas we want to cover and what areas we don't want to cover, and perhaps get a little more clarity. Today we're here because they have promulgated a rule. It's substantially different from the draft rule, and they made clear that many of the things that were discussed in the interim, it's going to regulate my bird bath, my pond on my farm, the puddles on my farm, the ditches on my farm, it's going to preempt land use. All of those things are specifically addressed in the final rule, which we want to override, and they are exempt. It does not change exemptions for agriculture. It doesn't regulate erosional features. I'm not going to read all the specific language, but it's all right here. It doesn't, it is the ditch issue we heard earlier in the urban area. That's solved under this, but it's still a problem today under the Bush-era rule, which is still the law of the land because the new rule was stayed by the courts. And now we want to kill it. So we don't want to fix the ditch issue, I guess, and live forever under the Bush-era rule. It doesn't regulate land use. I mean, if it did the things that people on the other side were saying, I think you'd find 85–90% of the members of this House would be voting for this resolution disapproval. The fact is it doesn't do those things, and we have very specific references to demonstrate that. And then on this issue of the illegal actions, there were, again, I was getting emails and phone calls from people saying, my bird bath, my pond, I got a lot of farmers in my district, my puddles, my roadside ditches, the forest industry, our roadside ditches. Well, those things are all exempt now. But these things were, out there, and the EPA was trying to educate people and say, here's what's in, here's what's out. And they found the weeniest of little stupid violations. This isn't like some law breaking. They used thunderclap to actually tell people a few things about this rule. They forgot to put on a disclaimer. Oh, wow, someone should go to jail for that. The right-wing nuts occupying the Malheur Wildlife Refuge and Clive and Bundy violating federal law, owing us $1 million and not paying for grazing like other people, they shouldn't be prosecuted. In fact, the chairman referenced those nuts earlier. I find that offensive and insulting to say that there is some sort of protest that relates to this discussion on the floor of the House by right-wing extremists who have taken over illegally and are destroying federal property in my state. And then secondly, they had another violation beyond using thunderclap. They had a link that went to someone else's site, and on that someone else's site, they were advocating for the rule. Wow, these are lawbreakers. These are the lawbreakers we want to go after. I mean, this administration doesn't go after any lawbreakers, from Wall Street criminals under the claps or these right-wing extremists in the West. I discussed that earlier during a 1 minute on the floor. But the point is here that if, we have much better clarification now. The courts are going to rule whether this is adequate or inadequate, whether Congress needs to act further, whether, the rule needs to be revised. We should let that process go forward. That would give us some direction, because we don't seem to be able to initiate on our own a reauthorization of the Clean Water Act and have a fair debate over what we want to cover and not cover. But the default action, repealing this rule, doing nothing, binds us to the Bush-era rule indefinitely. With that, I would reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves.